think we're ready now.
Yes, we are ready. So then you asked me to start. We've now started a meeting.
Good afternoon. You're at the City of Opa-locka Charter Review Board meeting. We apologize for the interruptions. Now we're back in session. I'm going to ask the clerk if she would introduce our presenter.
Good evening, Ms. Tipton, and thank you for doing this presentation. Can you hear me now?
I can, and let's check and make sure that everybody can hear me. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, we can hear you, and we do apologize for the technical issues we were experiencing.
No, it's always great to get to work it out. Madam Chair and members of the committee, congratulations on your appointment to the Charter Review Committee. I did want to share, as I listened to your opening discussion, that the Florida League of Cities conducts a survey every year related to the pay given to members of councils and commissions. And we would be glad to share that salary survey information with your clerk so that she can distribute that information to all of you.
Thank you.
Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and hit the share screen and bring back up the PowerPoint that we were talking about. And I'll have that up in just a second. Hopefully that'll come straight through for all of you. There we go. So again, good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to present on behalf of the League of Cities. While we are the statewide association for all the municipal governments, we do not take a position in a pro-con sense on what a city's form of government should be. But I did want to just share a few slides and see if it's helpful to you in your discussions and your deliberations. We do have 411 municipal governments in the state of Florida now, and all of them have very unique charters. Obviously, no two are completely identical. Some of them do have some characteristics that are similar. And as you've already discussed at your previous meeting, you know that the charter acts like a constitution or a broad framework. It's certainly not where the details live. We rely on laws and ordinances and written policies, usually adopted into an administrative code for the day-to-day operations of the city. However, all of that is built upon the very firm foundation of the charter, so it's a critically important document. You as a committee, these are just some bullets to let you know how the rest of the state looks at the process that you are going through as well from other municipalities. And you are the third charter review I've done in a couple of weeks. So it's a very popular thing for this time of year right now as well. These are the common elements in a charter, and I'm sure last week as you looked through Opa-locka's, these will seem very familiar. There's been a model city charter since the late 1890s, started in part by a group coming out of New York City that involved Teddy Roosevelt so that they could have a model charter for the city of New York. That grew into the model city charter for the nation. Years later, they wrote a model county charter as well. So a lot of folks have a very similar charter structure because many municipalities in the United States used this model when they were putting their charters together. So to get into some of the more specific characteristics, one of the things the league is often asked about is what's the right size for a city council or a city commission. I'm going to use council and commission interchangeably. We have quite a mix there for Florida in terms of what term is the right term. The most common number, including the mayor, is 5. We also have cities with 6 where the mayor is non-voting and someone on the council serves as a council chair or council president. We've got cities with 7. And of course, Jacksonville has 19. So they're kind of the outlier in all of these statistics. We also have 2 cities with a council of 3, but they are both cities that have less than 25 people in their population. So that works very well for them. We're often asked too about the terms. Between 2 and 4, the cities in Florida are fairly evenly split. However, as a compromise, some cities prefer a 3-year term. It does mean holding elections in off-election years. And obviously, depending upon the county and the other elections that are being held, it can mean a standalone election that the municipality has to pay for. As I said, the 2 and the 4 are the more common number, but we do have a percentage that use the 3-year term. Most cities do a staggered city commission. So for example, on a council of 5, you'd have 2, 2, and 1 as a possible option. And that 1 is usually the mayor's seat. And those are split up across the years. You could also run the election 3-2 so that the terms are staggered and the entire council is not up all at once. We do have examples in Florida where the entire council does run at once, but it is certainly a lesser percentage population-wise or percentage-wise. The other question the league is often asked is, how are councils and mayors elected? Unanimously, the mayors are elected at large for those cities that designate the seat and have it in the charter that the mayor runs for the mayor's seat. There are cities, and you'll see this below, where the mayor is rotated or elected from within the council. But where the mayor runs directly, it is an at-large seat. We also have cities where the entire council is also at large. We have cities that use single member districts. We also have something called a seated council, which is the council represents geographic boundary set districts or wards, but all of those officials run at large regardless of the seat boundaries. The boundaries are done to determine a fair representation across the municipality, and the elections are then at large. We also have a handful of cities that are a mix of at-large and single-member district. For example, on a 7-member council, 4 are by district, 2 are at-large, and then an additional mayor's seat. Or you could make that 5 on the council are by district, and then 2 at-large seats, one of which is the mayor. Those are some of the examples we see across the state. As a reminder then, if you don't elect the mayor directly, the mayor can rotate from each of the seats for a 1-year term. The mayor can also be elected from within the council each year at an organizational meeting. Someone nominates a person to be the mayor. That person from the council then holds that post for the year. The next year, there is then an election for the mayor again, and someone is nominated once again for that. The forms of government in terms of the terminology, I know this has been shared with you, so I'm not going to read to you. These are the statistical breakouts in terms of the numbers for Florida. Council weak mayor is originally brought over from Great Britain. You can see the percentage or the number out of 411. Council with a strong mayor. In both of these cases, we always make the comment that weak and strong have nothing to do with the mayor's personality. It is, what does the charter say that the authority is going to be vested into that position? The commission form has largely gone away and is not in use in Florida. However, we have 2 municipalities that do have this form in their charter. By ordinance, they are not doing this for the day-to-day administration of the city, but I do have to include it because it is statistically present. And then that leaves the council manager or commission manager form, which is what Opa-locka has currently. And that is about 280, depending on the count in any given year, anywhere from 280 to 285. We also have 3 or 4 cities that are hybrids. If you're doing the math and adding them up, they do not fit in any category. Most of them are a blend of the forms, but we do want to note them for mathematical purposes. One of the other things we're often asked about is, why do some cities put a specific charter in a specific department rather into the charter? This is often a utility or a police department or a fire department. Based upon the reason for the municipalities and corporation, the people felt so strongly about a particular department that they want it in the charter so that it would take a charter referenda and vote in order to remove that particular department or to alter it. For some folks, this came as close as they could get to carving something into stone. But of course, with any given election cycle, ballot measures can be proposed to amend a charter. Of course, most political scientists will tell you that that's not the best way to run a municipality. However, there is really no way to make sure that something never changes, because even charters can be amended. That's the point. So for some cities, identifying certain departments in the charter is what gave them the greatest level of comfort as they put that charter forward. There are some positions as well that are usually referenced in the charter, regardless of the form of government, and those include the clerk or records officer. Different titles are used different ways, but every municipality in Florida has to have a records officer. That's required through the state and through the archives process that's been adopted with the Florida legislature. So a records officer is often singled out, whether as the clerk or as a different position. In addition, an attorney, of course, is something that every municipality has. So identifying that position in the charter is also important to most cities. Then, depending upon the form of government, other positions can be mentioned in the charter, and there's a wide variety across there. Those cities that have the council manager form usually establish it in the charter. Those cities that do not have the council manager form, obviously that's not one of the elements then. However, attention is given somewhere in the charter for a non-manager form that does include the day-to-day administrative responsibility, whether that goes under the mayor or whether it is retained by the council in a council weak mayor form. And we can come back with questions and talk about that if you've got questions. So I did a comparison chart that's on the next slide, and this is just some explanations as to the data that is in it. You'll see the population range. There's 11 for the chart on hand. I actually looked at 20 different municipalities, but in order to give you a broader depth in terms of the positions, I used 11 and put Opa-locka in the middle. You'll see that there's variety within the elected seat numbers, and within the forms, it's between council manager and council strong mayor. There is one hybrid municipality in the list. There are no council weak mayor and no commissioned cities. So this is the detail on the chart itself. And actually, I think I need to correct that. There is no hybrid. This is between council manager and council with strong mayor in the forms. And in the chart below it, I did indicate that just outside of the population range, Palmetto is an additional council with a strong mayor form of government. It would have taken another stretch to the population rank to have brought them in. But this way you can see in terms of the size of the councils and the forms, what is the predominant or pattern that develops within this population range. Some of the best practices that we often share with cities who ask for this presentation is, obviously you all are a representative group having been appointed for this board. In an era with the websites, it's great to be able to share not only the minutes from this committee meeting, but other resources related to charters in general to help the public understand why charter reviews occur and what goes on with them. If there are any measures that get headed to the ballot for the city, developing a frequently asked questions portion on the website can really help the residents to understand before they vote. And it can help pose questions as to what does the old language mean, what would the new language mean, etc. Oftentimes too, folks like to reach out to their various civic organizations to have them host meetings where members of the Charter Review Committee, as well as the elected officials, are available to ask questions or to answer any questions that the public might have. We see these as some of the best practices for charter review committees around the state. One of the cautions that's usually given is that in a few charters, especially in the last few years, confusing language was used both within elections laws related to qualifying, as well as giving authority to more than one position. So I point that only because I'm often asked what are problems that people run into with a charter. We had a city where identical power was listed under both the mayor and the manager. Obviously, that's going to be a conflict, not a good idea. And then as far as the qualifications, some cities are so specific in the charter that they then can't get the ordinances to work around certain election parameters. And so again, the caution that I hear from the attorneys all the time is that less is better when it comes to charter writing. Some of the trends, I'm usually asked what's the predominant issues or numbers. And because of the complexity of municipal government, particularly with regard to utilities, the trend has been toward what is called council manager or commission manager form. And all of the new incorporations in Florida since the 1980s have been council manager or commission manager forms of government. I'm often also asked what the usual review time period is between charter reviews, and 10 to 15 years is the framework that is the most common that we see. Lastly, these are some questions that the Model City Charter asks, and this is their 9th edition in the book that just came out last year. These are some of the questions that have helped guide charter review committees over the years. And I also wanted to give resources towards the municipal code library, the Model City Charter itself, and our website, for example, for the salary information that we discussed that I'll be glad to share with your clerk. And lastly, to stop and see if you all have any questions of me.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Tifton. Very informative help. I think it will help guide us through this process. So we really appreciate your time. Are there any questions from our board members for Mrs. Tifton? No questions? Okay. Madam Clerk, is that her presentation is over, or?
I'll go ahead and say goodnight if there aren't any questions, and staff can be in touch with me and let me know if there are any follow-up things that I might provide for the city.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for your time, and I wish you all the best in your process.
Thank you again.
You're welcome.
Well, board members, that's a wealth of knowledge, and if you've had time to peruse this agenda packet that the clerk made for us, there's a lot of helpful information. It answers a lot of the questions. It answers a lot of the questions that we had, and I think it would be it's a very good guide to help us guide us through this process when we're talking about forms of government and also salaries for our commission. The next presentation.
The next two presentations are Robert Anathan and Jerry Lazar. However, in lieu of their presentation, they have provided a memorandum, which I provided everyone a copy with.
Okay, we have it here in front of us. It's the single document. Okay, the question, one of the questions asks, it says, how much money does the city require to get out of financial emergency? The response was the money needed is based on budgetary needs from the city from one budget year to the next, and based on the total revenues and total expenditure needs of the city. Question number 2, wanted Mrs. Lazier to address the audit findings that led to the cancellation of the commission benefits. And her response was, an audit finding did not lead to the cancellation of the commission benefits. In the Code of City Ordinance, Article 2, City Commission Section 2.3, Mayor and Commission compensation outlines mayor and commission compensation to $550 per month. So in clarity, it had nothing to do with audit findings.
That is correct.
So that's what we kind of brought to light the other night, that what the mayor and commission gets for salary is based on what is in the charter.
Correct.
So in order for it to change, you have to have a charter review. They can't just make an ordinance or resolution to change their own salary.
That is correct. The ballot question would have to go before the voters, and the voters will have to vote obviously in favor of that.
Okay. Okay, before we go any further, anyone would like to say anything concerning the this report that we have from the Finance Department? Everyone is clear? If so, we're gonna move to the next section. And I think that's going to, Madam Attorney, where did we leave off on last meeting?
Sorry, really quickly before we go on. Oh, yes, I'm sorry, really quickly before we go on.
Yes.
So you just asked a question, is this memo clear? And I think question 2 is definitely clear, but question 1, the answer is not. And so I believe the question was asked in the sense of like helping us determine what room there was to make changes to commissioner salaries. And so, obviously going in with an informed decision. So I'd be curious if we can get additional clarification, but I don't know that this truly answers the question.
If I may, try to give some clarity. What I think this is saying that the city has a budget, and based on the budget is where you would put all of those dollars, whether it's commission, salary. It wouldn't have a direct effect on the budget, because when you make the budget, and if the commission salary, just as it is today, $550, if it was 700, 800, or whatever the amount was, that would be a part of the budget. So I don't think it would make our budget, you would just have to find where you're gonna take the money from and where it's going to be added in. So I don't think it really will have such a impact, if I may, on the budget, because the dollar amount is gonna be whatever the dollar amount. If it's 2 million, you're gonna have to deal with the 2 million for the city as a whole in putting together the budget. So Madam Attorney or Madam Clerk, if you all can help us out, I think I'm on point, but help us out.
So basically, during the budget process, if there is some sort of salary increase eventually, that would have to be budgeted for, obviously moving forward. But if that happens in the middle of a budget year, then obviously you have to have like some
Budget
sort of budget amendment
Yes.
to be able to compensate for that dollar amount.
Does that kind of help you out some?
I still don't necessarily think that the response to question 1 answers question 1, but I say for now we can move on. Yeah. Thank you.
Madam
Yeah.
Chair?
Yes.
I mean, the only thing I can do, since that's not my area of expertise, I can just follow up and see if they can provide further clarification as to the response on that. And then I'll be able to bring it back at the next meeting.
I appreciate that.
Okay. But we do understand that when you are dealing with budgets, you have to deal with the amount of money that you have there. You can't over budget, and it's not good to under budget. You have to deal with the amount of money that you have in the pot to work with.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, Madam Attorney, where did we leave off on last week?
Sure, we left off with administration, so that would be Article 3. And if you'd like for me to proceed, I'll pick up from there.
Article 3,
Yes, ma'am.
okay, that's page
That would be page 8.
8 of
Yes.
23.
Yes.
And the overall page number is 128 in the entire packet.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Did we go over section 2.5, the powers? From where I said that we concluded on section 2.4, we stopped there and we
Yeah.
were to resume on 2.5.
Yeah, Madam Chair?
Yes,
Yes, if you notice on the agenda, it does say, section 2.5, that's where we left off, and I think that's
Oh,
where
okay.
we're continuing today.
okay.
Thank
Okay.
you so much. I guess
Okay.
I'm trying to rush through this for you. Okay, so powers 2.5. These are the powers of the city and the determination of all matters of policy shall be vetted in the commission. And so, as we talked about in the prior meeting, the city commission is the entity that sets the policy, and the policy is carried out through the city manager under the form of government that we have. And so this is basically stating what powers different these entities have. And so to appoint, the city commission can appoint and remove the city manager, obviously, establish departments, administrative departments, adopt the budget, which you all were just talking about with the clerk, authorize the issuance of bonds by a bond ordinance. The city commission can inquire into the conduct of any office, department, or agency of the city and make investigations as to the municipal affairs. They can appoint the members of a duly constituted city board. So whenever you hear appointments at the end of commission meetings, that's what's happening. And that's within the boundaries of the city commission. They can adopt plats. There are other land use issues that the city commission deals with, such as modifying the official map of the city, regulating and restricting the height. These are kind of zoning issues, height, number of stories of buildings, those kind of things, providing for safe and sanitary housing accommodations for families of low income. That's something that's a little unique, and in the city of Opa-locka's code, you don't see that a lot. Adopt, modify, and carry out plans proposed for the clearance of slum districts like our CRA. That's what the city can do. It can adopt, modify, and carry out the plans and proposals for replanning, improvements, and many of the other land use type issues that I mentioned before. In addition to that, it can provide for an independent annual audit. So this is actually required by statute, and the city commission can and does do this, but it's also a statutory requirement as well. In terms of section 2.6, as we move along, the induction of the commission into.
Excuse me, Madam Attorney. In the powers of the city commission here, I don't see any language as it relates to the appointment or removal of the attorney or the city clerk. It only refers to the city manager.
That is an inherent power of the city. These are not meant to, or not intended to be all of the powers of the city commission, but obviously the city commission does have the power to hire and fire the city attorney, the city clerk. For whatever reason, it could be because at one time, maybe the clerk was selected independently. I don't know, but clearly that is a power. If you all want it to be, it says without limitation to the foregoing. So it's not intended to cover everything. Obviously, I can think of a whole lot of things that the city commission can do that may not be listed here. It's not unusual, and it's not shocking, and it's not something that you may want to spend time changing, but but
Maybe not spend a lot of time changing, but because though that is one of the areas that this city commission, and since I've been a part of Opa-locka, that always
it's in
have
another
been.
section. It's
that-
in another section of the
another-
charter under city manager, city attorney. So you'll see it in just a moment. Once we go forward, it's not, right.
I understand that, but my concern is that it only in this area, that it addresses the city manager. It does not address the city clerk. And I will find it in other sections, but that's just a concern of mine. But we can keep going.
Right. So it does say without limitation. and it is addressed in the charter. So in the main body of the document, it may not be this specific section, but it will, it is addressed. Okay, so section 2.6, if Madam Chair, I'll go to that section if there are no other questions. Induction of commission into office, and this has to do with meetings of the commission. The first meeting of each newly elected commission and mayor for induction into office shall be held as soon as practicable after the vote has been certified. So this is pretty consistent with a lot of other charters. Once the vote has been certified, sometimes you'll hear or you'll see that a city commission may wait until the next regular meeting, which is, kind of standard and happens, but and that probably is the soonest time practicable. But let's just say you're on summer vacation and you had a special election and somebody wanted to be sworn in, they could actually make a good case that it may not be practicable to wait, the summer session to be sworn in. In terms of vacancies, forfeitures of office, filling vacancies, the office of the commission members shall become vacant upon a person's death, resignation, disability, suspension, or removal from office in any manner authorized by law or forfeiture. And so for some reason, I thought I covered this before because I have markings on this, but you all say I didn't. So, so these are also consistent with some of the Florida statutes in terms of vacancies. If someone does something to, let's say that's misfeasance, malfeasance, there are certain situations where the governor can remove from office, and that office can become vacant for that reason. In your charter, forfeiture of office also deals with disqualification. So if a person ceases to maintain a permanent residence within the city, that can be a basis upon which they can no longer serve in that office, and that becomes vacant. If there is by legal declaration of mental incompetence, if someone is determined to be mentally incompetent or ceases to be a qualified elector or is convicted of a felony, violates an express prohibition of the charter, and finally lacks at any time during the term of office for which elected any qualification of the office prescribed by this charter or by law. So you have a catch-all phrase there. Again, it's, this may not be inclusive of everything that you see in 1 through 5, but 6 is kind of a catch-all where you can, if appropriate, and it meets, the egregious criteria that would warrant, you could use that number 6 catch-all phrase and remove as well, or the person would forfeit office. Forfeiture by absence. In most city charters, there are provisions by which a person can be removed from office if they miss a certain number of meetings. We talked about last week or the week before last that one of the issues that the commission can consider, it is the determiner of its own members. And so if there is an issue with respect to whether a person can serve or is qualified to serve, similar to other charters, the City Commission of Opa-locka would be the determiner of that in most cases. But here, the mayor, vice mayor, or commission member shall be subject to forfeiture of his or her office in the discretion of the remaining commission members if he or she is absent without good cause from any 3 regular meetings of the commission during any calendar year, or if she or he is absent without good cause from any 3 consecutive regular meetings of the commission, whether or not during the same calendar year. So these are things that I don't think it's come up, at least to my knowledge, in the history of the city, although it may have, and some of you may know, but I'm not aware of that. But this could become an issue if somebody missed a number of meetings and they were called on it, and other commission members spoke up and wanted to do something about it. The procedures The city commission shall be the sole judge of the qualifications. And so you'll see again that language under procedures. They're the sole judge of its members and shall hear all questions related to the forfeiture of a commission member's office, including whether or not good cause for the absence has been or may be established. And so this burden, you should know, is on the commission member in question. So the person that's being challenged, they have the burden of proving that they, did not miss the meetings or whether good cause has been established. It is going to be their burden. And and you can actually look at past meetings and also, to make this determination. A commission member whose qualifications are in question or who is a member in question shall be entitled to a public hearing. And so this can't be something that's done, two members or three members meet at somebody's house and they decide, which will never happen to Opa-locka, of course, but they decide that they're going to determine that the person is no longer qualified. This has to be something that's published in the newspaper. It's done in the public. People can know about it in advance. And any final determination by the commission that a commission meeting has been, a commission member has been forfeited, it shall be made by a majority vote of the commission and by a resolution. So it can't be by a vote at the commission meeting where somebody just comes and makes a vote. It actually has to be by a resolution with notice and an opportunity for that commission member being challenged to be heard. The filling of vacancies, we've seen some of this lately in the city of Opa-locka, and it was done pursuant to these provisions here. If less than 6 months remain in the unexpired term, the vacancy shall be filled by the city commission within 30 calendar days following the occurrence of the vacancy. So if there is, less than 6 months remaining, that can happen. And if the 6 months or more remain in the unexpired term, the vacancy shall be filled by the city commission within 30 calendar days following the occurrence of the vacancy. And this person can be chosen to fill, a person can be chosen to fill the vacancy until the next regular scheduled Miami-Dade County-wide election, at which time an election shall be held to fill the vacancy, which is what we see with 2 of the seats right now. However, if the commission is unable to fill the vacancy within 30 days, a special election to fill the vacancy shall be held no later than 90 calendar days following the occurrence of the vacancy. So these are the procedures again that would be followed, and you'll see the rest of the remaining of this page have to do with filling vacancies. We'll move on to page 8, please. Let's go to 2.8, dealing with recall. The electors of the city shall have the power, and this is also afforded by Florida statutes, but they have the power to recall and to remove from office any elected official of the city to the extent permitted and in the manner prescribed by the Constitution and the laws of the state of Florida. And so there are very specific recall provisions in Florida statutes that tell us how that process is to take place. Now let's move on to Article 3 under administrative. And these are the areas that we alluded to a little bit earlier regarding each of the appointed officials. There shall be the city manager, who shall be the chief administrative officer of the city. The city manager shall be responsible to the commission for the administration of the city affairs and carrying out the policies. There's that policy word again, because we saw earlier that the city commission sets the policies, but it is the city manager who is responsible for carrying out the policies adopted by the commission. So the term, conditions, and the compensation of the manager, shall be established by the commission, and that's normally done by a resolution, and we also have a contract. The city manager has appointment. The city manager shall be appointed a majority, by majority vote of the commission, and that's the same for the city clerk and the city attorney, as you'll see in a moment. The city manager shall be, may be removed by a majority vote of the commission, provided that at least 3 affirmative votes shall be required for removal. So that's just another way of saying it has to be by a majority vote, 3 out of 5 commissioners approving. The powers and the duties of the manager are set forth in section 3.3. And if you turn over to page 9, you'll see those powers starting with number 1 through 11. Now, these powers include these things, but it may not be everything. And so they include being responsible for appointing, hiring, promoting, supervising, removing of all city employees except the city attorney, the city clerk, and all employees of the office of the city attorney, and all employees of the office of the city clerk. So basically, the city manager has the authority to deal with everybody else in the city and their staff and his staff, with the exception of the ones that are set forth here. And the city manager also can direct and supervise the administration of all departments and offices, but not the city boards or committees unless so directed by the commission. Because of course, you remember that it's the city council that has this authority over the city boards. The city manager shall attend commission meetings, and that person has the right to take part in the discussion, but not, of course, the right to vote. That manager shall ensure that all laws, provisions of the charter, and directives of the commission subject to enforcement and to administration by him or her, or by employees subject to his or her direction and supervision, are faithfully executed. And so all this means is basically that the manager will abide by the laws of the city and the state and the federal government if applicable. The manager shall prepare and submit to the commission a proposed annual budget and capital program. And this is also required by statute as well as our charter. The manager shall submit to the commission and make available to the public an annual report on the finances and administrative activities of the city, as well as prepare such other reports as the commission may require concerning the operations of the city departments, offices, boards, agencies. The last few things involve keeping the commission fully advised of the financial condition. And of course, we talk a lot about that because the state has an oversight authority right now over the city of Opa-locka. Also, the city manager shall execute contracts and other documents on behalf of the city as authorized by the commission. The city manager also will perform such other duties as are specified in this charter and as may be required by the city commission. So you may not see, again, everything set forth here, but there may be things that are voted on at meetings and things that are otherwise required by the commission of the manager, or things that may be set forth in the manager's contract that will dictate other responsibilities that may not be here. And the manager finally has the responsibility of pursuing and collecting of all allowable fees and taxes and maximizing financial reserves as is necessary to sustain the city and the service levels requested by the citizenry. So, those are some of the things that the manager does. So the acting city manager, from time to time, there may be an acting city manager, as our current city manager was acting previously, and that is done pursuant to 3.4. And you can see how that was done here in 3.4. Also in section 3.5, there is a bond of the city manager. So every city manager who serves shall furnish a Fidelity Bond to be approved by the commission. So this is actually paid for by the city. This is not the manager's having to get his own bond, but this is done, and it's done by all of the all of the city managers. And the premium of the bond shall be paid by the city. There we go. So let's go on to page number 13.
Madam Attorney,
Yes, ma'am.
um, for clarification, are we, where we have, we use the word interim city manager, is that the same as the acting city manager?
Well, technically under the charter, it would be acting city manager. But you do find that sometimes those terms are used interchangeably, but the technical name would be acting city manager. Like in the last resolution that we had dealing with the city manager, it was called, in the final one, it was called acting city manager.
Okay.
Yes. So going on to the city clerk, section 3.6.
It's a city manager. Is it interim or is he?
No, this manager is now the permanent city
Permanent
manager.
center.
Yes, he's been voted. There were a certain number of days, and after the days expired, then the city commission reconsidered, and now he is the permanent city manager after the certain number of days expired. And so,
Okay.
yeah, so this is just those provisions that I was just reading regarding acting deal with if there is an acting city manager. And I'm trying to skip through a little bit, but since there were questions, let me just kind of zero in a little bit. The acting city manager is to perform his or her duties during his or her, like it's dealing with a temporary absence. And so, for instance, when Mr. Pate was here, this city manager was acting city manager because Mr. Pate was actually still technically and contractually the city manager, but he was acting because it was a temporary placement. But at some point, when the city commission hired him, he became the permanent city manager, right? Okay. So under 3.6, the city clerk shall be appointed by a majority vote of the commission. The city clerk may be removed by a majority vote of the city commission. And so there's the answering the question that you had, Madam Chair, regarding, why you didn't see it in that one section. It is here. And so it is a part of the charter. And in charters, it doesn't matter where you see it. The fact that it's a part of the charter is what is relevant. So this does address your concern, and you'll see in a moment the city attorney will be the same. But the city clerk may be removed by a majority vote of the city commission, provided that at least 3 affirmative votes shall be required for removal. So again, a majority. The city clerk is the official keeper of the city's seal. And in addition to being the person who will do some of these following duties, but it's not exclusive. These are some of the things that the city clerk shall do. And the charter says the city clerk shall be responsible for the preparation of the ballot, to conduct all elections. In this case, that is something that is contracted out. But the city clerk does give the ballot provisions to the supervisor of elections, like pretty much all cities do in the 67 counties, to the supervisor, and the supervisors conduct those elections because they actually own the equipment that's been certified by the state. The city clerk shall be appointed such deputy city clerks. They shall appoint such deputy city clerks as may from time to time be necessary to carry out the duties of the office. The city clerk shall attend all meetings of the city commission and shall keep the minutes of all such meetings as the city clerk does. The city clerk shall certify and maintain all permanent official records. And in addition to that, finally, the city clerk performs other duties as required by ordinance or resolution. So there's that kind of catch-all sort of phrase there. The city attorney shall be appointed also by majority vote of the city commission. And under the terms and conditions and compensation as may be established by the commission. Generally speaking, that's done through a contract like the city manager and the city clerk. The city attorney shall report to the commission and may be removed by a majority vote of the commission, provided that at least 3 affirmative votes shall be required for the removal. The expenditure of city funds in section 3.8 specifically states that no funds of the city shall be expended except pursuant to duly approved appropriations or as authorized by ordinance. And so it would be under this is an issue that actually it just came up today. Joanne and I were talking about it, but from time to time, there is a push or a concern from commissioners, from staff, that when there is a change in any kind of city finance, it has to be done by an ordinance. But that is language that is kind of a little different in this city charter than in other city charters, because a lot of times it can be done by resolution, which doesn't make it as difficult or as costly to do. But in the city of Opa-locka, it is it's a notice. It's going to be, and it's also noticed by resolution, of course, because you have to put it on an agenda and you have to publicize it before you would actually to let the people know what you're putting on the agenda, and it would have to be a budget issue. But this comes up from staff sometimes because they feel that it's so cumbersome by the time they pass it and they have another passage of it. If something changes at the next meeting, you're already in the process of passing this budget item that may need to be revised, and it's not easy to revise it. And then you have to pay again the Miami Herald or whoever the city uses to then re-advertise this. So this could be an issue at some point that management may come and speak with you all about in terms of making it a suggestion, or they may take it directly to the city commission as a possible item to consider for the charter change. But I want to just tickle that for you, just so that you know when you hear about it, what the issue is about. The city boards and agencies, all city boards or agencies existing prior to the adoption of the charter shall be deauthorized, subject to reauthorization until the provisions of under the provisions of the charter. So the commission shall establish or terminate such boards and agencies as it may deem advisable from time to time. The boards and agencies shall report to the commission. And so I want to put a little pin in this 3.9 as well. There has been some mention earlier of a charter board or civil service board, which used to be a part of the charter. But when and people can debate whether or not it worked well or not, but one of the issues, that was just an example of one of the boards that was in your charter that was required to be in the charter. But when the drafters of this charter decided, what they decided to do was to take all of those things out, and then if the city commission wanted to do it, they could do it by ordinance as opposed to putting it back in the charter. And that was done for a number of different reasons. And so you won't see, if you went back and you looked at the track changes from how the charter, and it's easy to do, you can go on MuniCode and find it. But if you looked at how the city charter used to look with a lot of specific listed boards, those are not there anymore. And they're not there because this allows things to come back, but come back as ordinances that can change from time to time. And you heard the speaker earlier today talking about how a lot of attorneys, and I want to say, yes, a lot of attorneys want charters to be lean, and you want it to be lean for a reason, because it's such a monumental task to change it, right? So if there are to go back to the voters for referendum, you can simply make the change in the ordinance that may adjust to how things would work best for the city. The next area is competitive bid requirements and purchasing. The city does, just so that you know, the city does have a procurement statute or procurement ordinance, a purchasing ordinance that it utilizes. But in addition to that purchasing ordinance, And it says, except as otherwise provided by law, contracts and public improvements and purchases of supplies, materials, and services shall be awarded or made on the basis of clearly drawn specifications and competitive bids, except in cases where the commission, based on written communication of the city manager, specifically determines by affirmative vote that at least 3 commission members, that it's impracticable or not advantageous for the city to do so. So in most cases, and pretty much in, like, I'll say just about 100% of the cases, just about, you're going to have some kind of a purchase procedure for how you come about securing services for the city through a process that is publicly available, that other people can bid on, that is transparent, so that these things can be done in a way that allows for the city to advertise, as it says here, and the city can also reject and accept or reject bids or all bids. The city, by an ordinance, can approve by a majority vote a purchasing and competitive bid procedure, which is what we have. But this was something that is set forth in the charter. So the will of the voters in voting this provision in was that, pretty much in all cases, unless these limited cases that are set forth here, the city just determines it's not advantageous and a determination is made, you're going to have a purchasing policy. There are certain legislative changes you should be aware of under section 4.1. It talks about commission meeting procedures, and there are, just so you know, rules of procedure that the city commission has adopted. There are, and they are set forth in the city ordinance, but here it even talks about rules and the need for them. So the meetings, the city shall hold at least 11 regular meetings, monthly meetings in each calendar year. So actually, although the city commission meets twice a month, it could actually meet just slightly less than once a month, because we have 12 months in a year, and it says you have to hold at least 11 regular monthly meetings in each calendar year at such times and places that the commission may prescribe. And so it's here in City Hall. And it further talks about, in terms of a procedure, that special meetings may be held on the call of the mayor, the city manager, or a majority of the commission members upon at least 24 hours notice. And so if there is an emergency or something like that, or a need to meet very quickly, the city can meet within 24-hour public notice as it deems necessary in the case of an emergency affecting life, health, property, or the public peace. The rules and minutes, the commission shall determine its own rules, which it has done, and I just talked about that a second ago, and you'll find more rules than this. You'll even find rules about the order of business and how the business is supposed to be conducted for the city, like the order of public comment and when that happens within a meeting. Excuse me, I need to take a drink. Also, there is information about quorum and voting. A majority of the commission shall constitute a quorum, as we talked about before, and with respect to voting, you have to vote unless there is a conflict. And then there are things that you do under ethics laws to declare conflict. And it refers to pursuant to state law. And that's what that has to do with, because voting and a requirement from voting and not abstaining. And the same would apply to you all's service here as Charter Review Board members. You must vote unless there is some type of a conflict. Meeting and time limits. No meeting of the commission shall exceed later than midnight, except upon the affirmative vote of a majority of members present at the meeting, provided there is a quorum present. And so if, and we sometimes have meetings go beyond midnight, rarely, but in the cases that has happened, it has to be a vote of a majority of people, of persons who are present, making that determination. There are certain prohibitions that,
Excuse me, Madam Attorney.
yes,
Before you go any further, I want you to take a moment to get some water. And does anyone have any questions? We don't want to get too far that we forget the questions as we go. If you need clarification on something or go back through something. Okay, you can
Okay.
continue.
thank you. Under prohibitions, the appointment and removals, neither the commission nor any of its members shall in any manner dictate the appointment or removal of any city employees whom the city manager or any of his or her subordinates are empowered to appoint. And so many times this is interpreted as a non-interference clause. It's not just in Opa-locka's charter, but it's in many charters and county charters and so forth. And so basically the commission can express views and it can freely discuss with the city manager anything pertaining to the appointment and removal of officers and employees. They can say, I don't like this or I like that or whatever, but they cannot dictate the appointment or removal of any city employee. And here we go again with the interference language. You'll see it in B. It says interference with administration. Except for the purpose of inquiries and investigations made in good faith and in accordance with the resolution adopted by the commission, the commission and any of its individual members shall deal with the city employee, shall deal with city employees who are subject to the direction and supervision of the manager solely through the city manager. And so this is something that our city commission is aware of and subscribe to. So these are some of the things that it tells you, just specifically that the manager can comment. The commissioners can comment, they can express their intent again, but the manager is solely the person who would make certain decisions as to his employees. Any commissioner violating the provisions of the section shall be guilty of a misdemeanor and upon conviction thereof shall cease to be a commissioner. So that is a penalty provision that is set forth in section 4.2. And we'll move on. Section 4.3 has to do with ordinances. These are, this is standard language. Pretty much this comes out of, at least it appears as though it comes out of the Florida statutes closely aligned to it. And so actions requiring an ordinance, in addition to other acts required by law or by specific provisions of this charter to be effected or authorized by ordinance, those acts of the city commission, these things shall be by ordinance. So you have to adopt or amend the administrative regulations. You have to establish rules and regulations of violations of which carry a penalty. So if you ever see something that says there's a penalty for something, you cannot see it by resolution. It has to be a part of an ordinance. They can, you have to levy taxes by an ordinance. You have to grant or renew or extend a franchise by an ordinance. One of the things that I want to kind of bring to your attention, the city sometimes enters into lease agreements, and I know that is also in here because that's come up as well, although it's not popping up. A franchise, set service or user charges for municipal services or grant administrative authority that has to be done by ordinance, authorize the borrowing of money, convey or lease, there it is, convey or lease or authorize by administrative action the conveyance or lease of any lands of the city. So even when we have, and this could be something, and this is something I've noticed that is an issue for the city, there are times that the city may lease out space within the building that it owns, and it has to come before the commission as an ordinance. That's kind of unusual, and that's costly for the city because it's not really necessary. The city can still approve it by resolution. they would still see it. But this is something that's unique and has come up. And we always have to really remember, don't, put it on as a resolution. It needs to be put on as an ordinance. But I just bring that up in case that's something that you all wanted to take up. And at some point when Joanna and I help you wrap up, we may bring some of our own issues, as we are non-voting members, and can let you be aware of some of the things like I'm doing right now. Also, by ordinance, you have to amend or repeal any ordinances previously adopted. So you can't repeal an ordinance with the resolution. It has to be done with an ordinance as well. And there may be emergency ordinances that are passed from time to time. And this language under 4.4 tells you how that is done, the form it's to be done in, the procedure, and how the effective date is to be listed. Let's go to page 16. Starting with 4.5, the annual budget adoption. There is an annual budget, as you all know. The city is required to balance its budget each year. And I think you heard that from our clerk a little bit earlier. That provision and that requirement is set forth by charter, and it's also in state statute. There is a budget adoption process that has to be complied with, and the commission shall by ordinance again adopt an annual budget on or before the 30th day of September of each year. So of course, the September 30th ends the fiscal year for the city. If it fails to adopt an annual budget by the state, the commission may by resolution adopt that the amounts appropriated for current operations for the current fiscal year shall be deemed adopted for the ensuring fiscal year for a period of 15 days. So there are some statutory provisions also. It's kind of complicated in terms of how budgets are to be adopted, but we do follow the Florida statutes. The fiscal year again is set forth and it starts it ends the 30th day of September. Each fiscal year starts the first day of October. And that's all that 4.6 says. 4.7, appropriation amendments during the fiscal year. You heard earlier, there was some talk about supplemental budgets. And if you need to adjust or amend a budget, this is the language that allows for that, as well as, again, Florida statutes does too. So this language, some of it may not exactly mirror the statute, but it has the same intent. The authorization, recording, and disposition of ordinances and resolutions, charter amendments. And so the mayor and the city clerk shall authenticate by their signature all ordinances and resolutions adopted by the commission. In addition, when charter amendments have been approved by the electors, the mayor and the city clerk shall authenticate by their signatures the charter amendments. Such authentication to reflect the approval of the charter amendments by the electorate. So if and when there are changes that are made, it has to be recorded by the clerk, and changes to the charter, that is. It has to be authenticated by the mayor and the city clerk. It has to be recorded by the clerk, and it has to be available to the public. And the commission shall establish procedures for making all resolutions, ordinances, technical codes adopted by reference and this charter available for public inspection. And so similar to what we talked about, and I think in the first meeting, once you're not going to find, if you all have several changes that you decide to make as a part of the code, you won't find, and the supervisor's office will hate you if you do, but several changes, but I throw that out. But if you do have changes, you won't have them, or you may not have the full text of them, because you have a certain number of words by state law that you can put in a heading. But they will be available through the clerk's office for public inspection and on the website and other places that make sense for people to come in and see any changes that you make or you propose to make. Let's see. The tax levy, assessments and fees, the city simply by majority vote of the city commission shall have the right to levy, assess, and collect all such taxes, assessments, and fees as are permitted by law. And so this is just, this is what you find on your on your tax bill. So every year when you get your bill, you'll find all of the fees, all of the special assessments, everything set forth there. And this also is a provision in your charter that says that it should be set forth. There is an independent audit, which we alluded to a little bit earlier. That is done every year. That is by state statute. That is in your charter. And the city does have borrowing authority. The city shall incur no debt unless the incurrence of such debt is approved by the majority of the city commission. So the city can borrow, but it has to be approved by the city commission. It can't be an individual saying, hey, I think I'll go and, get the city this or that or whatever they think may be appropriate and borrow without the authority of the city commission. There is a huge area in the charter having to do with elections. It is Article 5 and on page 15. And so this is going to take us almost through the rest of the charter, not quite, but a few pages. So let's dive into that. So holding the elections, the regular election for members of the commission and the mayor shall be held on the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November of each even numbered calendar year. And I want to park here for a second because and you'll see this in just a moment where the supervisor of elections for our local municipality is going to be the city clerk. And Joanna, are you aware of any provisions that you think the board should zero in on, or you find particularly difficult to maneuver and may be a good opportunity to raise at this point?
Thank you, Madam Attorney. I don't at this time. However, I am reviewing the elections portion of the charter. And if I have anything, I will bring it forth at a future meeting.
Perfect. Thank you. So I told you when the elections are to be held. The commission shall order special elections on other dates. It can do that. And special elections may also be called on at least 30 days notice. The regulation of elections shall be by ordinance, establish such rules and regulations as it considers needful. Now, anything that we do pursuant to changing elections or maneuvering elections or any tweaks that are made are going to be by ordinance. And it can't be things that will be inconsistent with the charter. The municipal elections shall be supervised by the city clerk, as we mentioned a little bit earlier, and conducted by an election board consisting of an election clerk and 2 or more qualified electors. And I think this really applies to, and it's the way that it's interpreted is when it's necessary. Like if there was something happening where the supervisor of elections wasn't going to conduct an election, you could not agree on the supervisor decided they were not going to conduct a certain election because it just didn't work with their schedule. The city of Opa-locka, through its home rule authority, still would have the authority to hold an election. And if that were to happen, this provision would kick in. Otherwise, we do have annual agreements that we enter into with the supervisor of elections office, whereby the supervisor will conduct the elections for the city of Opa-locka. Registration of voters, compliance with ordinances and laws, elections are maintained, and maintenance of voters. Voter registration lists shall be conducted in accordance with the ordinances of the city. Again, this is something that's done with the supervisor of elections office. We don't do any list maintenance here in the city of Opa-locka. We don't touch the election rolls. Those are governed by the state of Florida. Regular elections of mayor and commissions. And that could be, I put a part there because that could be something if you were looking to clean up the code a little bit, that might be something that you may want to look at because those are things we definitely don't do. And it would be illegal for us to purge voters. Regular elections of mayor and commissioners, runoff elections, qualifications of voters, conduct of to conform to statutes. So this area has to do with when elections are held. Again, we talked about it being the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November of each even numbered year to choose a successor to the elective office of mayor or commission where said are expiring. Unless the general election being conducted by the Miami-Dade County Elections Department is held on another day, in which case the Opa-locka election shall be held on the same day. So this provision, I'm sure, was adjusted a few years ago to comport with the state law, which allowed for city municipalities to be more flexible and save money by being able to piggyback on county election cycles. Any person who shall possess the qualifications requisite to be an elector at the general state election shall have resided in the city of Opa-locka. So basically there is a residency requirement that you have to reside for more than 45 days next preceding, okay, let me go back. So any person who shall possess the qualifications requisite to be an electorate at the general state election shall have resided in the city of Opa-locka more than 45 days next preceding the city election at which he, it should say he or she, offers to vote and shall have registered with the elections division in Miami-Dade County, shall be a qualified elector of the city. So there is a, even though it's not a long process, but there is a requirement. Any person who shall be qualified elector of the city and who shall have resided in the city of Opa-locka more than 365 days prior to the day of the election at which the said person seeks to qualify as a candidate for the office of commissioner or mayor shall be qualified as a candidate to seek the office of commissioner or mayor. So again, that is additional information regarding qualifications. Any elections held in the city of Opa-locka shall be conducted and held according to the provisions of the general election law. So this is basically, this applies. So no matter what, there could be a requirement or a change at the state level where the state says, you know what, this is what we're going to do from now on. And if they put it in the statute, it doesn't really matter what's in the city's charter. And it can stay in there forever even, but you have to abide by whatever the state law would require. The commission may otherwise amend the annual budget from time to time. Hold on one second. Next page.
You're on page 16.
Thank you.
16 to 23.
Thank you very much. So this is a continuation of, but I was looking at this because it didn't appear to go with the elections issue. Yes, okay, yeah, so here we go. The name of an elector of the city shall be printed on the ballot. So these are very specific things dealing with the ballot. We won't go through each of that, but each of these things, but these things would have to be consistent with the Florida statutes because it does say how things are to be printed. But if the city were to do its own election, these would be things that would be required. And I will skip through this a little bit because these are probably more specific information that you need for our purposes. Initiative and referendum. So this is an issue on 5.2, which is on page 17, that I think will be most relevant to us. And specifically, it talks about the power to initiate and reconsider ordinances. So if there's an initiative, the electors of the city shall have the power to propose ordinances to the city commission. And if the commission fails to adopt an ordinance so proposed without any change in substance, to adopt it at the city election, to adopt it at a city election. So this is kind of interesting. This really does give rights of citizens, the authority to propose things and have those things considered as referendums on ballots. So in addition to the process that we're going through right now, where you can send your recommendations to the city council, citizens also have the authority to initiate items through referendum as well. The commencement of proceedings, a minimum of 10 electors may commence initiatives or referendums proceeding by filing with the city clerk an affidavit stating that they will constitute the petitioners committee. And these are things that again are set forth in Florida statutes. So while this is telling us this is how it's to be done, if any of this stuff is inconsistent with the statute, then the statute would prevail. It doesn't look like any is from my reading of it. But these are specific detailed things that may not be important for our purposes right now. Now that I look at it, there are specific things as to how to get something on, the number of signatures, 10% at least required, the form and content, what the pages have to say, the affidavit of the circulator, that you have to have that, the filing deadline. So these are things that are very specific as to how citizens will get petitions onto the ballot. Let's go to page 21. Still more of the same, and it goes deeper into what those requirements would be to get them both for commission review and also having an action that would actually be submitted to the electors for a referendum. The results of the elections, if a majority of the qualified electors voting on a proposed initiative ordinance vote in favor, it shall be considered adopted upon certification. So this charter does not say it has to be 60% or 66%, anything like that. It's the majority of the residents voting in favor, which would allow for passage. So let's go to page 19. Oh, are we going back?
Yes,
Okay,
we're going-
let's go to page 20. We're getting 20 would be the next, right? 7.3. My
Madam Attorney.
yes, yes, yeah, we're on, I'm sorry, yeah, it would be page 20. Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay.
I want to bring to our attention, the time is almost 8 o'clock, and I know that we can only absorb so much per meeting. But if we could try to,
But I only have one page left.
okay, that's what I was about to say. If we could go over that page, and then, if we have a little bit of conversation, maybe a few minutes, so that, we don't wear ourselves out and we have time to go home and absorb the information and come back with our concerns.
Thank you,
Mhm.
and I will be very quick. The last page deals with 7.3 deals with the city personnel system. All new employment, appointments, and promotions of city employees shall be made pursuant to a personnel procedures to be established by the city manager from time to time. And so there are personnel procedures, or there should be personnel procedures in place, and the city shall make efforts to encourage the hiring of city residents and to encourage employees to reside within the municipal boundaries. So that is something a little bit different. It does not require it, but, and it couldn't by law, but certainly is a part of the personnel system. It is unique that the charter does basically say that, it will encourage, the hiring of city residents. Variation of pronouns. So earlier when you heard me talking about, something just being masculine or feminine, this basically says, hey, we're cleaning up all of this. So if you see anything like that in the document, just assume that it is applying to both, either sex. And 7.5, no discrimination. The city has something specifically in its charter. Well, where it will not adopt any ordinance or policy that discriminates against any person due to race, religion, color, national origin, physical or mental disability, creed, age, sexual preference, or gender. And so we cover the gamut on that. In addition to that, precedents over related laws in case of conflict between the provisions of this charter and the code to be adopted pursuant thereto, the charter terms shall control. Moreover, so in other words, if you see some language that is in the code and it looks to be inconsistent with the charter, it's the charter that controls. Likewise, if there is language in the state law and it appears to be inconsistent with our charter, the state law would be in full force and effect. And finally, in terms of transition provisions, interim adoption of codes and pending matters, unless otherwise modified or replaced by the revised charter, the city commission, this is language that was in the last transitional state, and it just stayed here. And if the revised charter shall remain in full force and effect. And so if you all make changes, it doesn't mean that other parts of the charter go away. Those things that you did not change would still stay in full force and effect. So that is my quick and dirty overview of the charter as quickly as I possibly could go. And you all can certainly, I think it was time well spent, because it's not the kind of stuff that you want to sit in your living room and read when you could do so many other things. But certainly we can, Madam Chair, dive a little bit deeper in areas that you all have more of an interest in, and like we did today, have speakers and presentations and other things that may help to educate you on things that you may be interested in revising. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, Madam Attorney. Madam Clerk, you have any comments you would like to share?
Not at this time, Madam Chair.
Okay, board members, anyone have any comments that you would like to share? Y'all so quiet. Y'all gonna make me nervous. I don't want to be the one doing all the talking. None? Okay, well, I have a few. I would like for us on coming to our next meeting to bring, I know we started off this board with some concerns that we know in the forefront of our mind, one being compensation for elected officials and form of government. So if we would go through the information that we've received and at our next meeting, come back with some solid concerns that we could discuss. And I know that the city clerk, that we do advertise the meetings. I don't know what we could do to get more citizens to come out and give input. Do you all think we need to have a specific workshop just for citizens to come and have input, or you want to wait towards the end of our discussions and invite, and try to have a workshop just for the citizens? How do you think we should do that? Because I think the citizens, I looked on my phone and I saw, I think about 6 people that were watching the meeting. So we really need to get the information out in the community so we could try to get the residents involved in this process. Because I think that's one way that you get people to really understand why you're putting these things on the ballot, if they understood, your reasoning for doing it. So I don't know, anyone have any suggestions how we could get the residents more involved? Do we need to have a workshop? Do you want to keep it still at a citizens forum during our meeting? Talk to me.
I'd like to recommend a workshop. And I also wonder if we take the public comment section and put it at the end of the agenda as well, so it gives people who do participate, and hopefully we'll get more folks to participate, the opportunity to listen to us and then perhaps provide feedback at the end of our meetings.
Board members, to move public comments to the end of the meeting. So as we go through our agenda items and they hear what we say, we have one person that has been sitting diligently in the audience. And it's important, I think, for people to have input. So if it's at the end of the meeting.
Madam Chair, may I?
Yes, ma'am, you may.
I would not suggest that you have the public to speak at the end. If you want them to speak at the end, you should also have them speak at the beginning, because whatever decisions you're making up here, if they're speaking at the end, you've already made the decision.
Okay.
So if they could speak at the beginning and the end, or just at the beginning, so that you would know exactly what their, I guess, their concerns are at the beginning, and you can address those concerns during the meeting. If you wait until after the meeting, you've already voted or whatever, made the decisions.
Yes. Understandable. Understand.
Madam Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
So originally, when I drafted the first agenda, I actually had public comment at the beginning and at the end of the meeting. But I took off the one at the end of the meeting, and I said that I will wait for some direction from the board to see if that's the route that they want to go.
So, board members, what do you think? We have the input from board member Edmondson. What do the rest of us, what do you think about at the beginning and the end? Okay,
I support that, yes.
you support that? Okay,
As well as a workshop. I do want to also go back. I think it would be great for us to hold a workshop for residents.
okay. Okay, Madam Clerk, in between the times that we have meetings, I don't want to put no undue burden on the board members. But do you think we should have a separate workshop, or should we use one of our meetings during that month as a workshop? Because we're already coming like 2 times a month, and everybody have a lot going on. So what is the consensus of the board? Do you think we should use one of our meetings as a workshop for the public, try to get them to come out?
I'll throw out perhaps using one of our meetings, since we meet for 2 hours. I don't know how long the workshop will last, but even if we can try to maybe make the first half of the meeting a workshop, and then if it is possible, we can, try to take up some stuff under a board meeting shortly thereafter, maybe we all agree to maybe stay an extra 30 minutes just in case we need that extra time. But I do agree with you. Thank you for being respectful of everyone's calendars. So maybe let's use one of our meetings or one of our scheduled dates and figure out how we can perhaps fit both in if possible.
Madam Chair, I would second that, and also, yeah, we can always defer it to the next meeting if we do need to continue it and
Continue our
we can do
conversation.
that. So I would second it.
Because I think it's so important that we get some public input. These are going to be some very important questions. I think that we're going to come up with to go on the ballot, and we want the citizens to be informed. Okay. And go ahead, Madam.
Do we have a date for when you want to hold? I know you said on a date where you have a meeting, but which date would you want to have the workshop on?
What I would like for us to do is to possibly come back at our next meeting with some concrete issues that we need to look at. And I know the city attorney kind of threw out, as you were going through the charter, you kind of, gave us some points that you would like for us to look at. And also the city clerk, you have some areas that, so if you bring those back to us and we could discuss them, so that these are areas that we're going to be looking at preferably, then when we have the workshop, we already have a ground rule set, kind of, well, not rules set, but some groundwork
Okay.
that the public can give some input in.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Got it.
Okay, one thing I would like to, I don't know whether the attorney or yourself, is when the attorney was going through the city manager and we using interim versus acting. And she said that, the attorney said that that the commission had voted on the manager now to become the permanent manager. I don't know whether we took that action, but if you could just bring me back something to let us know, or maybe because they're using the word interim. Did you see the document that we even have here from the manager tonight has interim on it?
It may be a mistake. I can tell you, he definitely is the city manager right now. After Mr. Pate's contract expired or his time expired pursuant to the city's directive, the manager became so if it says interim on something that you're looking at, I can tell you without even spending any more time on that, he is definitely the city manager now. And so if you want to concur with that, Joanna, you may want to put it on the record so that the chair is comfortable.
And the reason why I say that, Madam Attorney, is because we have the audience that's listening to us. And those same people watch the city commission. So when they have questions, they call us and they say, well, is he the manager? Is he not the manager? And I want us to make sure that we're giving sound information from up here, because when we go back out in the community, they're going to ask us those questions. So you're saying that.
Joanna, do you want to chime in?
Yes, so resolution number 22-9934 says, in the second whereas, on January 14, 2022, the city commission appointed James Wright as interim city manager to serve for a term not to exceed 9 months, starting 12:01 a.m. on February 1st, 2021, and requiring a national search for appointment of a permanent city manager.
So then later, there was the resolution that appointed him, and there was later a resolution that I believe appointed him as the city manager, but why don't you do the research like the chair suggested and then come back. But I thought that he was the permanent city manager.
So
And
initially.
Your assistant is
sorry.
shaking his head. Yes, I think he thought that too.
So initially, the city commission appointed him as deputy city manager, and then a resolution was done after that, amending that legislation
To say
because
acting.
there's no deputy city manager in the
Right,
charter.
so that was
To
corrected.
correct that,
And
yes.
then it became, so that was acting to make it clear. But
So
then-
he was acting up until Mr. Pate was terminated, and then he became the interim city
Okay,
manager.
very well.
But I'll share with you the resolutions so that you can read it for yourself and just make sure that my interpretation is correct.
Yes.
Now, Madam Chair, did you think that that was something for the charter in terms of a charter issue?
Well,
Or
the reason why I brought it up is because when you gave clarification, it was not according to what the charter says acting, and we're using the word interim.
right.
It might
but-
be a small thing to us up here that maybe understand, but to the audience and to the residents, they want to know, is it acting or is it interim? And that's why I asked you the question.
What I tried-
Does those words interchange?
Yeah,
Do
what
they
I tr-
mean the same thing?
What I tried to explain, and I'll do it again, is that acting in your charter is for a temporary period of time. So it's not intended to be like right now. He's not temporarily acting at this point. He's described as interim because acting has a specific, when the manager is temporarily away, let's say the manager had surgery and would be out for a month, or had, some kind of a issue where he is not, he is the manager, but can't be there for some reason. That's when it's acting. So right now, we're using interim because there is no, this is like he is right now.
Yes.
He's here. It's not determined to be, kind of temporary or whatever. He's here until the commission determines otherwise, like the 9 months expire or whatever it is. But I wanted to make clear that the acting period is over. So we made the transition from that when we did the correction from deputy, made clear it was acting. And when Mr. Pate was gone, it then became interim because he is, here until, or whatever the term was, is not acting
Yes.
anymore. But until now, he is here until such time as the commission, takes some other action. But in terms of the charter, I was trying to just think about were you thinking that a change needed to be made in the charter based on that? Or is it just for clarification that you were trying to get more information for?
Well, it was for the charter and also for clarification, because again, I'll say that when we when we give out information to the public and they a novice, you would say in some areas, you want to give them information that they're going to understand and they're going to know, because why? They have to go to the polls and they're going to be voting on whatever we say, whatever the commission comes up with the input. So because you gave that breakdown of the manager, I just wanted to respectfully get clarification so that the residents will have full knowledge of it, because we're using two different words. So we don't have to belabor it, but
I hear you. And I just want to, because it is a short paragraph and it's 3.4, which talks about acting city manager. And it says to perform his or her duties during his or her temporary absence or disability. So it's a specific thing for a specific period of time. If there's a temporary disability or absence, it's not, nobody's been named as it was when Mr. Pate was here, the permanent city manager, right? According to Ms. Joanna. So
yes.
with that being the case, we're not talking about acting anymore, right? And so, and if he's not temporary, he's interim, because we know he can't be acting because there's nobody that he's filling the place for as a permanent city manager. And so I just want to, if you think people will be confused by that, I just wanted to spend just a second just to,
Okay,
make it clear, because we're not talking about a temporary absence or disability
yes.
of anybody
Got
who
it.
was permanent.
Anyone else?
Madam Chair, if I
Yes,
would,
ma'am.
please, I would like to also, I know that Joanna's going to bring it back for us to see that resolution. That resolution should actually validate what his position is at this time. And if we all can review it, because I piggyback with the Madam Chair, a lot of the public doesn't know whether he's interim, whether he's acting, whether he's permanent. They may not be aware of it. So if we list it and we validate it here, our chairman does, then the people can see and know exactly what it is. Many of them don't know that, I can say that.
Yeah.
They're
And-
not aware of it.
Thank you, Board Member Banks. And for the sake of those that are listening, when we're going through the charter and we are set with a responsibility to go through it. And if there are things that need to be changed, if you're using words that is not in the charter, it becomes a stickler for some people. Might not be for everybody, but it becomes a stickler. So when people ask questions, then we try to address it to the best of our ability. So I appreciate, Madam Attorney, I appreciate your.
No problem. Thank you.
So I'm respectfully asking that, because I've been asked that, well, what does the charter say? What does the charter say?
Right.
you know.
And so the charter doesn't address the word interim, but it's widely understood.
That's
and
what
it's
I'm
widely-
saying.
And it's widely used.
Used,
But in this
yes.
case, it doesn't need to, because we know that he's not acting, right? We know
Yes.
that-
Okay.
So, okay.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
for my clarification, I'm listening, but when I think of interim, it's because we do not have a permanent. It's acting in between until we can find a permanent. So is it safe to say they just haven't given him the powers? Well, he has the powers, but they
No,
haven't
he has
just
all the
named him as the
powers.
permanent? Why
I
wouldn't
think
they by
he
now?
has all the
He has the
power
powers, yeah.
of the city manager. It's just the wording. So we'll look at to see if that's something that we want to address in the charter, or we want to leave it as is. It might not be a big issue, but it's just something that I just wanted
Yeah,
clarification.
I think it's necessary because.
Yeah.
one
Because I've been
interpretation could
asked
be
that
different from
question
another.
like so many times in the last couple of weeks. Well, what does the charter say? You're on the charter review board. So I try to avoid all of that, but thank you, Madam Attorney, Madam
And-
Clerk.
and it's
Thank
helpful
you.
it's helpful for me to understand, that this is a question that people have, because then we can look at it in a way to craft language, if you all
Yes.
want to go in that direction and make it clear or whatever. I get it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else from the board tonight? Thank you all for being so diligent, and for those that are listening out in the audience, if you have questions or concerns, you could always send them to the city clerk, and she'll make sure that we get them so that we can address them, because we want this process to be reflective of our community. And we want to make sure that we're doing what's in the best interest of everyone. All of our residents are important. So if nothing else, motion to adjourn.
Motion.
A second.
Good night, everyone.